Recently on Sewing with Nancy, I interviewed Rachel O'Neill, a woman with a big heart for little girls in Africa. She began the Little Dresses for Africa ministry, encouraging those of us who sew to make simple dresses for the often neglected little girls in Africa. The Sewing with Nancy team modified Rachel's instructions, using yardage instead of pillowcases to create adorable sundresses. Our hope is that you'll make 2 dresses, giving one to someone you love and sending the other dress to Nancy's Notions. We'll then forward all the dresses we receive to Africa to benefit Rachel's ministry. On the Sewing with Nancy website, you can print out the instructions. It tells you the yardage you'll need, little cutouts for the armhole shapes. The yardage from 3/4 to a yard will make most of the sizes. Rick-rack, prepackaged bias tape, and some elastic are the supplies and tools that you'll need. So cut out the yardage accordingly to the directions, what size you'd like to make, and then sew the first seam together, one long seam. And that's going to be, after it's been sewn, it's going to be centered at the back and pressed open. The first step is a lot of pressing. Press under the hem by 1/4 of an inch and then 2 inches so that you have a double hem or a double area at the top. Or you could serge this edge. For a fast pressing for the 2-inch hem, just use a Dritz hem gauge and align the folded edge to the 2-inch mark and press really quick. Along the neckline and armhole, you'll also be doing some pressing and trimming. The templates that you cut out earlier are now going to be used to trim, and we've already done the trimming. And the template for the medium size would be placed along the fold. You'd cut out, flip it over to the other side, and also do the same cutting. The elastic at the top needs a casing. Again, some pre-pressing is needed. Fold under 1/4 of an inch along the top and then 1/2 of an inch. Again, use your gauge for accurate measurement. Do the same at the back. And for allowing that bodkin to go through very simply, trim away the seam allowance at the seam. Press under 1/4 of an inch and then 1/2 of an inch. And top stitch along the fold. On this particular dress, we have the top stitch created along the edge. And then we're going to place the elastic in this area. On the instructions, you'll find the size of the elastic to create. Rather than cutting the elastic, I just like to mark it on the elastic. This is 7 inches for the size medium, and then place it through the casing. That way you don't have to worry about losing the end. You can just, after threading it through, then securely pin or stitch and then cut off the elastic. Before sewing the bias tape around the edge, you might want to consider adding a trim to the hem. We've already top stitched the hem into place, but our sample shows some rick-rack around the edge. Here's a close-up of stitching, overlapping the rick-rack along the stitch line and just top stitching it into place. It's a simple embellishment to add. Finally, add the bias tape around the edges. You're going to cut the bias tape into 2 lengths, and you'll get the lengths on the pattern. And find the center point of the bias tape. And I'm just finger pressing it. And you'll find with pre-made bias tape that one side is just slightly narrower than the other. I like to stitch the narrower side on first. This is my center point, and I would unfold it so that I'm going to be stitching in the well of the seam where it has been pressed. I would align the center of the bias tape at the underarm area and match the areas. After matching the cut edges, just pin around the edges. Here's a close-up of stitching in the ditch, the well of the pressed bias tape seam. After you've stitched in that curve area, the next step is to wrap. Wrap the bias tape around the edge to finish all the edges, and then edge stitch. And here you can see edge stitching. After edge stitching, also stitch the bias tape closed that's going to be used to tie the dresses together. And here's a close-up of our finished little dress. Simple to make and fun for little girls to wear. Find the fabrics and supplies you need to sew these little dresses at Nancy's Notions. Order your supplies today. For the free project instructions, visit creativekindness.com.